Hello guys, Charles here and welcome back to my channel. This video is a continuation of a previous video called Counting Confidence, so I'm going to be assuming that you're confident with all the things we discussed in that video before you dive into this video. If you didn't see the Counting Confidence video, you can click up here to watch that now to familiarise yourself with the topics and the justifications for learning them. In today's video, we'll be continuing by talking about tuplets and how to count them. So triplets are probably the first challenging rhythmic concepts that most musicians cover. We need to really understand triplets on a methodical level so that we can apply that same method to more complex tuplets as we encounter them. As always, these counting approaches should be practiced, felt, and then forgotten. We don't have the mental bandwidth when playing live to be doing all this sophisticated counting in our head. We just have to feel these things. So we've got to make sure we're breaking these challenges down in the practice room, internalizing them and understanding them as deep as we possibly can, and then crossing our fingers that in the live performance on the stage, all our hard work comes together. So you can learn most musical theories by simply listening and copying. However, it's really important that as well as being able to perform something, you understand why and the theory behind it. You should really be able to explain it to someone else so clearly that they lack any confusion whatsoever. That's one of the great benefits of teaching, is consistently having to explain something to a variety of different students at different levels. And they ask sensible questions that cover things that we had never considered because we've always just known how to do this stuff. So it's especially important that when you're covering a simpler topic like triplets, you really understand it on such a deep level that when the topics become more challenging, like 5s against 4s or 7s against 3s or all sorts of weird tuplets, you understand triplets so well that the methodology used to tackle triplets can be applied to 5s and 7s and all sorts, as we'll do in this video, and you never hit that brick wall. One of the big problems we have with players who play by feel or just do it, or they just like, oh, I just know how to do triplets, is you may know how to do triplets, but when the things get too complicated, and we don't often hear them in recordings, it's not very often we hear too many 5s and 7s consistently throughout recordings. The challenge level is just always gradually increasing, whereas if you just play by feel, you very often find you're going to be up against that brick wall. So hopefully understanding the method we're going to be using today shouldn't be too complicated for you, and it'll just increase your confidence to work on a few examples in your own time as well. Nothing wrong with doing these with a pen and paper before you try and actually perform them. So a tuplet is simply a ratio. We have fit this many notes into the space of this many notes. The most common ones we come across are triplets, which are 3 notes into the space of 2. The next would be 6s, which would go into the space of 4. 5s in the space of 4, 7s in the space of 4, and so on. So in the previous video, we discussed how to count odd subdivisions on a single beat. And it really boils down to choosing a saying with the right number of syllables, and you keep saying the beat numbers, and the subdivisions in between you simply divide into how many spaces you need. So for triplets we were saying 1 per lit, 2 per lit, 3 per lit, 4 per lit. Each of those single beats has been nicely divided into 3 even sections. Now, we also covered that that table that we looked at is not exhaustive. It was simply the 4 most common counts that we use. But this table is infinite. We can split into 5s, 6s, 7s, 8s, 9s, and so on. So 5s, I would often say the word hippopotamus, but I would replace hip with the beat number. So if I wanted to split one beat into 5, I would say 1-opotamus, 2-opotamus, 3-opotamus, 4-opotamus. For 7s, you would choose a 7-syllable word. Now, I very rarely use 7s, but the word unconventionality is a 7-syllable word, so we can simply replace the un with the number. So we say the number, then conventionality, to give us our total of 7. That would be 1 conventionality, 2 conventionality, 3 conventionality, 4 conventionality. So we've subdivided a single beat into however many subdivisions we need. So the challenge with tuplets is not doing them on a single beat, we simply say a word. When they start to cross several beats is when it becomes quite a bit more challenging. Now, tuplets are far easier to work out than they are to perform and to practice. So I'm going to be showing you how to work these out today, and if there are any particular tuplets that you are currently seeing in the pieces of music you're working on, or any that you just want to work on for your own street cred, then you'll know how to tackle those after this video. So any tuplet has two numbers in it, 3 in the space of 2, 5 in the space of 4, 7 in the space of 6, whatever our tuplet is. We are primarily interested in the first number. The first number, 3, 5, 7, whatever it is, tells you which counting row and which subdivision you're going to have to use in order to perform that tuplet. So if the first number is 3, as it is in a triplet, we know we're going to have to be using the triplet counting row. If the first number was 5, we would know that we would have to come up with our 5 counting row. I use hippopotamus, whatever yours is, and so on and so forth. So that first number of the ratio of the tuplet is which counting row you must use. The second important number that we're interested in is we need to look at how many total beats that tuplet is going to cross. So if we had a crotchet triplet, that would be 3 crotchets or 3 quarter notes in the space of 2 crotchets or 2 quarter notes. Well, 2 crotchets is 2 beats, so we would be using the first 2 columns of our counting table. Each column represents a beat, and we know from the first number we're going to be counting using the third row, the triplet row. So we have 2 columns, and currently we have 6 counts in our triplet row. So to group them evenly, we would simply put them in pairs. 1 per lut, 2 per lut. That tells you the starting point of your 3 crotchet triplets. Let's say it was a minim triplet and we had to fit 3 minims or half notes in the space of 2 minims or 2 half notes. Well, 2 half notes would give us 4 total beats. We would be using all 4 columns of the table. We know because we're using triplets that we have to count using row 3, and we would simply group them into 3 groups. Well, that would be 4 subdivisions per group. So we would be saying 1 per lut, 2 per lut, 3 per lut, 4 per lut. And there's my 3 minims. Let's look at an example in 5s. So let's say we had 5 crotchets in the space of 4 crotchets. Well, 5, the first number, tells us that we're going to be counting in the subdivision of 5. 1 epotamus, 2 epotamus, 3 epotamus, 4 epotamus. We need to look at how many beats we are crossing. Well, 4 crotchets is 4 whole beats. So we need to group those 5 subdivisions of hippopotamus into groups of 4. Hippopotamus, 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 hippopotamus. So there's our 5 groups, and we've managed to fit 5 groups over the 4 beats. Finally, let's try 7 over 3. So again, we've got to fit 7 crotchets into the space of 3 crotchets. Well, how many beats does 3 crotchets take up? It takes up 3 beats. So we know that we're going to be using count 7, row 7, 1 conventionality, and we're going to be using 3 total columns. So all we need to do is group our subdivisions of 7 into units of 3. 1 conventionality, 2 conventionality, 3 conventionality. And that gives me my 7 notes over the 3 full beats. So to summarise all of this, our first number of our tuplet tells us which counting row of subdivisions we're going to be using. 3 would be triplets, 5 would be quintuplets, 7 would be septuplets, and so on, and we would use the equivalent counting row. We are then interested in seeing how many whole beats that tuplet is intended to cross. That tells you how many columns you're going to be using. Once you know how many columns and which row you're counting, you're going to simply group the subdivision row evenly to give you the right number of notes. If it's a triplet, you need to group it so that there's 3 groups. 5, you need to group it so there's 5 groups. 7, so there's 7 groups, and so on and so forth. And that will tell you the starting placement of each of those tuplet notes. So I hope you'll feel a bit more confident next time you encounter a confusing subdivision, and that you'll take the time to at least, every week have a little bit of time working on your tuplets and just trying to tackle the maths of this in your head. Please leave your own tips down below for tackling complicated rhythms, and let me know any other topics you'd like me to cover in the future on this channel. Please give this video a like, subscribe, ding that notification bell, and share with any of your friends who can't play triplets. And as always, I hope you're all doing very well, getting plenty of practice in, and I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one. Cheers.
Roll up, let me embed a story you'll never forget. A drip, drip, but drowning in debt now. You can't buy your way out, and I heard you find it difficult to cope well. Here